The desperate plea the Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Trell of the Vexian Commonwealth stepped forward. His 6 legs trembled beneath his crystalline body. Behind him, representatives from 47 star systems waited with barely concealed fear. "We have no choice," Trell said, his voice translator crackling with emotion. "The Kravik swarm has consumed 12 worlds in 3 cycles. Our fleets are broken. Our weapons are useless. We must ask them." A collective shudder passed through the chamber. Counselor Mira, a floating gas being from the nebula reaches, pulsed an angry red. "You cannot be serious. The humans? The Deathworlders? Have you forgotten what they are?" Trell's optical sensors dimmed. "I have not forgotten, but we are dying. Every day millions of our people are harvested by the swarm. What choice do we have?" The chamber erupted in frantic discussion. Humans were legendary throughout the galaxy, but not in a way that brought comfort. They came from Earth, a hell planet where everything tried to kill everything else, a world with crushing gravity, violent weather, and predators that hunted in the darkness. And somehow, impossibly, humans had not just survived, they had thrived. They had conquered their nightmare world and then reached for the stars. When humans first made contact with the Galactic Council 70 years ago, there had been panic. Initial scans of human physiology revealed impossible truths. Their bones were reinforced with minerals that could withstand impacts that would shatter most species. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would kill others. They could survive in temperature ranges that spanned deadly extremes. They needed minimal sleep, could function while injured, and possessed a pain tolerance that seemed almost supernatural. But the most terrifying thing about humans was not their physical capabilities. It was their minds. Humans were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They did not give up. They did not surrender. And when they bonded with something, a cause, a people, an idea, they would die before abandoning it. The Council had quietly agreed to keep humans at a distance. Trade was allowed but carefully monitored. Human colonies existed on the frontier, far from civilized space. Everyone was polite to humans, but nobody truly welcomed them. Now, the Council faced extinction, and the Deathworlders were their only hope. "We will draft the message," Counselor Venn finally announced, his feathers flattened in defeat. "But do not expect them to come. Why would they help those who have shunned them?" Trell said nothing. He had visited Earth once as part of a small delegation. He remembered the blue-green planet hanging in space like a jewel, beautiful and terrible. He remembered meeting a human diplomat named Tom, a simple name for a simple-looking being. Tom had smiled, a gesture Trell later learned showed teeth, the mark of a predator, and said, "We know the galaxy fears us. But we remember what it's like to be afraid too." 3 days later, the message was sent into human space. It was carefully worded, requesting assistance against the Kravik swarm, offering payment in resources and technology. The Council expected rejection or perhaps silence. They received neither. The response came within hours, faster than should have been possible. It was a single line of text: "We are coming." Hold on. Trell felt something he had not experienced in months: hope. But around him, other counselors exchanged worried glances. The humans were coming, yes, but what did that mean? Would they arrive with a small task force? A diplomatic delegation? No one knew what to expect from Deathworlders who had been called to war. In the outer rim, near the Vexian home system, the Kravik swarm continued its advance. The swarm was ancient, a collective of insect-like creatures that consumed everything in their path. They had no diplomacy, no mercy, no purpose except endless hunger. 14 worlds now lay dead behind them, stripped of all biological matter, leaving only barren rock. The Vexian defense fleet, what remained of it, held position at the edge of their system. 500 ships, once the pride of the Commonwealth, now battered and desperate. Admiral Crick stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the long-range sensors. The swarm would arrive in 2 days. The humans, if they truly were coming, would arrive in 4. They would be too late. Crix closed his eyes, preparing for the end. He thought of his family on Vexia Prime below, and hoped their death would be quick. The age of the Galactic Council was over, but in the darkness of space something was moving. Something fast, something angry. The Deathworlders were coming. The fleet arrives. Admiral Crix did not sleep anymore. There was no point. In 30 hours, the Kravik swarm would reach Vexia Prime, and his small fleet would die trying to stop them. The humans had not arrived. Perhaps they had changed their minds. Perhaps the message had been a cruel joke. "Admiral," his communications officer called out. "Sir, something is happening." Crix turned to the display screen. At first he saw nothing unusual. Then space itself seemed to tear open. One hole, then 10. Then hundreds. Blue-white energy rippled across the darkness as jump portals bloomed like deadly flowers. "By the ancestors," someone whispered. Ships began emerging. Not the small task force Crix had imagined. Not a diplomatic fleet with a few escorts. This was an armada. Hundreds of vessels poured through the portals, each one bristling with weapons and armor plating that looked more like fortress walls than ship hulls. Human dreadnoughts, massive and brutal in design, took position in formation. Carrier ships, each one capable of holding thousands of fighter craft, arranged themselves in a defensive grid. Destroyer squadrons, sleek and predatory, began running patrol patterns. And behind them, support vessels, medical frigates, supply haulers, and mobile repair stations. Crix's tactical officer's voice shook as he read the numbers. "Admiral, I count 3,200 ships. This is impossible. No one can move this many vessels this quickly." But humans could, because humans did not think like other species. When the Galactic Council sent a distress signal, they had expected a small relief force, maybe 100 ships at most. Humans had sent an entire battle fleet. Actually, they had sent 3 battle fleets converging from different territories across human space. A communication request flashed on Crix's console. He accepted it with trembling hands. The face that appeared on screen was human. A woman with dark skin and eyes that held something Crix recognized immediately: controlled fury. She wore a simple uniform with symbols Crix's translator identified as military rank markers. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Coalition, commanding officer of the First Response Fleet. We received your distress call. Where do you need us?" Crix struggled to find words. "Admiral Hayes, we did not expect such a response. The swarm will be here in less than 2 days. Our forces are—" "You're exhausted," Hayes interrupted, her voice firm but not unkind. "You've been fighting alone for too long. That ends now. Transmit all tactical data on the Kravik swarm, movement patterns, attack strategies, biological weaknesses if you've found any. My fleet will take primary defensive positions. Your people need rest, but Admiral, you do not understand. The swarm cannot be stopped. They have destroyed everything in their path. Our weapons barely damage them. They adapt to our tactics. Hayes smiled, and Crix saw her teeth. "Admiral Crix, I read your species profile on the way here. Vexians evolved on a peaceful garden world with minimal predators. Your people developed technology through cooperation and trade. You built a beautiful civilization based on harmony." She leaned closer to the screen. "Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight before we learned to farm. War is in our blood, and we are very, very good at it." The communication ended. Within minutes, the human fleet had positioned itself between Vexia Prime and the approaching swarm. Crix watched in amazement as the humans worked with frightening efficiency. Fighter squadrons launched for reconnaissance. Defensive platforms began assembling in orbital positions. Massive railgun batteries extended from the dreadnoughts like the spines of some enormous beast. On the bridge of her flagship, the HDCS Unbroken, Admiral Hayes studied the data on the Kravik swarm. Her second-in-command, Commander Ross, stood beside her. "They're big," Ross observed, reviewing the size estimates. "Individual swarm units mass about 2 tons each. Armored carapace, acid spray capability. They travel in formations of 10,000 or more." Hayes nodded slowly. "Insect behavior patterns, hive mind coordination. Overwhelming numbers used to break enemy lines through pure mass assault." She looked at Ross. "They've been fighting species that evolved in safe environments. Species that see war as an unfortunate last resort. And now they're meeting us," Ross said. "Now they're meeting us," Hayes agreed. "A species that hunted mammoths with sharpened sticks. That crossed oceans in wooden boats to find new things to fight. That looked at the atom and asked, 'Can we make a bomb with this?'" She turned to her communications officer. "Send message to all fleet commanders. Battle stations. Weapons free when the enemy enters range. Throughout the fleet, humans prepared for war." The Battle of Vexia Prime. The Kravik swarm arrived exactly when predicted. They came as a living wall of chitin and hunger. Billions of creatures moving as one mind across the darkness. Their bioships, grown rather than built, pulsed with organic weapons. Smaller swarm units flew in clouds so thick they blocked out the stars. On every Council fleet ship, alarms screamed warnings. This was the nightmare that had destroyed 12 worlds. This was extinction approaching at relativistic speeds. The swarm expected the usual response. They expected defensive formations, careful tactics, and the slow retreat that always came when prey realized they could not win. They expected fear. Instead, the human fleet accelerated forward. "All ships advance," Admiral Hayes ordered calmly. "Fighter wings, begin your runs." Dreadnought batteries fire at will. The first human salvo lit up space like a newborn star. Railguns hurled tungsten penetrators at velocities that made them relativistic weapons. Missile pods launched thousands of warheads, each one carrying payloads designed specifically for organic targets. Energy weapons, focused and brutal, carved through swarm bioships like hot blades through flesh. The Kravik swarm recoiled. Nothing had ever attacked them with such ferocity. They adapted quickly, changing formations, bringing forward their heaviest units. Acid sprayers the size of buildings began firing, and bioships launched boarding pods filled with warrior organisms. The human response was immediate and terrible. Fighter craft, piloted by humans who had trained their entire lives for combat, tore through swarm clouds with machine precision. Their weapon systems tracked hundreds of targets simultaneously, firing in patterns that created kill zones where nothing could survive. When swarm warriors boarded human ships, they found something worse than weapons waiting for them. They found humans in armor. Marine Commander Jackson led boarding defense on the carrier Valiant. When the swarm breached the hull, his team was ready. The warriors were 2 tons of armored horror, with mandibles that could shear through steel and acid that dissolved metal. They had killed millions. They had never fought humans at close range. Jackson's combat suit multiplied his already formidable strength by a factor of 10. His rifle fired explosive rounds designed to penetrate organic armor. But more than that, he had something the swarm could never understand: the accumulated knowledge of 10,000 years of human warfare. "Contact front," someone shouted. The swarm warriors charged down the corridor, expecting prey to flee. Instead, Jackson's team advanced to meet them. The corridor became a killing zone. Explosive rounds tore through carapaces. Plasma cutters severed limbs. When ammunition ran low, humans drew blades and fought hand-to-hand against creatures twice their size. And the humans were winning. Jackson slammed his armored fist through a warrior's thorax, feeling the exoskeleton crack. Another warrior's mandibles clamped onto his arm, but the suit's armor held. He activated his wrist-mounted flamer and the creature released him, burning. "Hull breach sealed," his engineer reported. "All hostiles eliminated." Similar reports came from across the fleet. The swarm had boarded 17 ships. On all 17, human Marines had slaughtered every warrior that came through. The swarm's greatest tactical advantage, overwhelming close combat capability, meant nothing against Deathworlders who had been apex predators before they discovered fire. In space, the battle continued. The swarm kept adapting, but so did the humans, and faster. Human tactical computers predicted swarm movements before they happened. Human commanders coordinated fleet actions with a precision that came from centuries of competitive warfare against each other. Admiral Crix watched from his flagship in disbelief. His small fleet had joined the battle, but the humans barely needed them. Where Vexian ships fired careful, aimed shots to conserve ammunition, human ships unleashed continuous barrages that turned space into a storm of destruction. Where Vexian tactics emphasized survival, human tactics emphasize total annihilation of the enemy. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," his tactical officer whispered. "No," Crix replied, understanding now. "They fight like they have everything to protect." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Kravik swarm was shattered. 90% of their force was destroyed. The survivors fled back into deep space, pursued by human destroyer squadrons that would hunt them for weeks, ensuring they never regrouped. Vexia Prime was saved. Admiral Hayes's face appeared on Crix's screen again. She looked tired but satisfied. "Admiral Crix, the immediate threat is eliminated. My fleet will remain in system until we're certain the swarm won't return. We'll also leave behind defense platforms and training personnel. This won't happen to your people again." Crix felt moisture forming in his optical sensors. Tears, he realized. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you help us? After how the Council treated your people?" Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, gentle this time without the predator's edge. Because you asked. Because it was the right thing to do. And because humans protect our friends, she paused. We hope the galaxy will be our friends now, Crix understood. The Deathworlders had not come for conquest or revenge. They had come because someone needed help, and humans could not ignore that call. In the council chamber, when news of the victory arrived, Trell closed his eyes in relief. The Deathworlders had saved them all, and the galaxy would never be the same.